The protagonist of our story spent his whole life serving the Empire in order to return to his homeland. But he was received with betrayal and was finally eliminated. However, thanks to an artifact, he was reborn as a baby in one of the noble families. He decided to take this opportunity to take revenge. Using his knowledge and the new power he gained as a necromancer, he became the genius of the family and set out on his journey. The events begin on Earth in the year 2045, in the middle of a chaotic battle between soldiers and monsters. A soldier is shown wounded in battle by the attack of a monster. Inflicting a fatal wound on his chest, a huge and terrifying monster looms over the remaining soldiers. The fallen soldier looks up helplessly, wondering if this is the end before the monster attacks him. Our hero, Ancien, appears, saving the warrior at the last moment, and fighting fiercely with his sword. The huge monster launches multiple attacks simultaneously towards Ancien. Ancien is shown deftly fighting his way through the monster's successive attacks. He avoids a sudden blow that almost hits him and fires his weapon to remove one of the monster's tentacles. Ancien calls the soldier he saved. We realize that he is the supreme commander of the last defense force on Earth, and he urges the soldier to get up and keep moving. The soldier gets up, confirming that he heard the order, and returns to the battle using his rifle. The scene shows the endless swarms of monsters, indicating the decades-long war between humanity and monsters. Ancien explains that there are only a few monsters left in front of them, and that he is finally in front of his target, advancing quickly. But when he arrives in front of the last monster, a huge golden magic circle suddenly appears before him, surprising him. Ancien wonders in a state of shock about the nature of the golden magic circle that appeared before him. One of the commander's soldiers screams, confused, surprised by his sudden disappearance. Ancien hears a voice that orders him to answer the call, and suddenly, golden magic chains bind him. The man who summoned Ancien, an old wizard, appears, expressing his amazement at the successful summoning, and excited to see the otherworldly hero he had only heard about. The bound Ancien wonders about these bright shackles and where he is. The old wizard welcomes him to the Empire as the hero of another world, and suddenly, the wizard asks Ancien to defeat the Demon King and save his world. Ancien responds with disdain, considering this talk crazy, and angrily asks about his identity. The identity of those who speak to him, and his location, insisting that he is in Korea and has no time for this nonsense. The magician abruptly interrupts him, ordering him to keep quiet. He then activates the magic bond of the pact, gas, causing Ancien intense pain that makes him scream. The magician tells him that if he had listened when asked nicely, the magic would not have hurt. Ancien suffers from the pain, thinking angrily that the magician never asked him nicely. The magician repeats his request to defeat the evil Demon King and asks him to save the Empire, while a sword lies on the ground before him. The wizard adds that if Ancien does this, then maybe they can return him to his world. He then asks her if she will accept his request. Ancien agrees to the force. And so Ancien relates how he was summoned to an empire in another world, and began a new battle as the hero. He describes how he fought tirelessly, and carried out endless suppression missions. He spent his time chopping and slaughtering again and again, fulfilling the endless requests of the Empire. 3 years passed, then 5, then 10 years, as he continued to fight for the Empire against the Demon King's army. He remembers sacrificing his youth to finally defeat the Demon King. Baylor, dreaming every night of returning home, believing that he had finally earned his freedom. However, as soon as he finished his mission, the same old magician came to him with a new task. Ancien protested, insisting that this made no sense and violated their agreement. But the magician replied that saving the Empire does not end with killing the Demon King. He explained to her that those who opposed a unification war must also be eliminated to prevent the rise of rebels, and that there was only one last threat left for and to face. The target was a dangerous individual named Mud from the Night Nation of Teutonia. The magician promised him that he would get his freedom after eliminating this man. The magician asked him in a manipulative tone if he would help them just a little more. Ancien bitterly thought that he had no other choice. He was just a chained dog, and he cursed them silently. The scene shifts to the fiery nocturnal nation of Teutonia, where Ancien wonders when this slavery will end. And in the middle of the battle against Badul, Ancien manages to stab him with his sword. Ancien confronts his opponent Beryl, who calls him naive. Ancien replies that he has no other choice. Ancien apologizes to Sister Beryl, and Beryl acknowledges him by mentioning that he is the otherworldly hero, Ancien. The injured Mud tells him as he falls to the ground not to be sorry because he too will be eliminated soon. Ancien thinks it's over and he can finally come back. But suddenly, Count Brandenburg appears behind him. Ancien is surprised when the Count congratulates him on a job well done. He stabs him in the back with his sword. The shocked Ancien recognizes the identity of the man who stabbed him. It's Count Brandenburg. The Count praises Ancien, acknowledging that as Commander-in-Chief and Holy Knight of the Empire, he fought valiantly to the end. But mockingly adds that it is rare to see a house dog with such loyalty. Ancien realizes the bitter truth, calling the Count a bastard, and confirms that the promise to return him to Earth was a lie. The Count wonders about the usefulness of keeping a dog from home that might turn and bite its master. The Count says goodbye to Ancien, and as he falls to the ground, he thinks that he knew that they would not let him go peacefully, and curses them all. And as he exhales his last breath, and the resurrection gem shines in his chest, Ancien swears that he will never forget this humiliation, and that the empire that deceived him will pay the price with its destruction. That night, Ancien's life closes its eyes, while another life opens its eyes with congratulations to the Duchess on the birth of her son, Dale. The Duchess tenderly looks at the newborn and tells him that she is his mother. The newborn, Ancien, looks at her and the man standing next to her, and feels that the woman looks familiar to him. Suddenly, he remembers and recognizes the man. He is Duke Jackson, the Empire's greatest necromancer and dark wizard. Ancien realizes that this means he is in Acropolis, the Empire's center for black magic, and specifically in the Tower of Black Magic. Remember that the Resurrection Stone, which allows only one reincarnation, had worked. He had secretly hidden the stone during his days as a house dog, as a way to one day break his leash, and the fate of his new birth was left in the hands of fate, and fate made him the eldest son of the family. Duke Jackson, one of the most important noble families of the Empire. The baby smiles, happy to be born with a golden spoon. He secretly swears that once he grows up and learns necromancy, he will annihilate those damn taxes. Duke Jackson realizes that the baby is not crying. The worried Duchess asks the nurse to check him closely, and the nurse notices that he is strange, and his breathing is very clear. The baby, Dale, thinks to himself that, of course, he will not cry, wondering how old they think he is. The nurse assures the Duchess that her breathing is stable, and that there is no need to worry. But the Duke anxiously wonders if the silent newborn is a bad omen. The nurse tells him not to worry, but adds that if they are really worried that he won't cry, they should just slap him until he does. The nurse proceeds to slap the baby. To her surprise, the baby, Dale, emits muffled sounds of anger with every slap. The Duke comments that he is a stubborn child, and the Duchess adds that he must have inherited his stubbornness. The Duchess smiles and asks for the baby to be given to her to try herself, while Dale angrily thinks that they are silly, and tells them in his mind that his son is fine. The Duchess stops slapping the baby, Dale, who looks at her in shock and thinks angrily, damn. Instead, his mother gently holds him, and when a warm hand touches his small cheek, Ancien suddenly remembers something. He remembers that he had long forgotten what heat felt like, as shown in an earlier shot of the sitting alone. And while feeling the gentle touch and affection of his young noble mother, Ancien, who never shed a tear in his previous life and was impassive, can do nothing but cry loudly. 8 years have passed since Dale's birth. The Duke and his wife are talking in his room, where he comments that time seems to pass quickly, and his wife agrees. The Duchess asks if Dale is still in the studio, pointing out that he has been buried in books since he was 4 years old. The Duke jokes that he must have gone out to her. The Duke tells his wife seriously that Dale seems interested in magic, and the Duchess reminds him of the promise she made to him. The Duke confirms that he remembers his promise not to pass on the necromancy to Dale, as the latter is shown reading in the library. The Duchess confirms that she remembers, and the Duke reassures her. The Duke tells her not to worry, and they start talking about Dale's birthday present for tomorrow. Their conversation is interrupted by a knock on the door, and he wonders who it will be at this hour. A maid bursts into the room calling the Duke, and tells them in a panic that something is happening to the young Master Dale in the study. The Duke and Duchess are surprised and run to the library, calling Dale and asking if he is okay. They find Dale kneeling on the ground, surrounded by a huge aura of blue mana. He calls his parents, and they shout his name in shock. The Duchess runs to hug Dale, asking him worriedly if he is hurt and what has happened, but he assures her that he is fine. The Duke remains thoughtful, pointing out that he can feel the mana in the air. He thinks in amazement about how Dale, who has just turned 8 years old, is already capable of this. Then he calls his son. The Duke asks his son seriously if it was he who released the mana from his body. Dale panics internally, realizing that he made a mistake and that this will seem strange to them. Dale thinks that he didn't even know that he could release mana so quickly, and he is worried that they might suspect his true identity if he does not respond quickly. But the Duke smiles and slaps Dale on the head, saying, "This is my boy." The Duke adds that it is a pity that he cannot teach her micromancy. Dale is surprised, thinking, "I can't learn micromancy of my father," and wonders anxiously for his revenge. The Duchess asks Dale to return to his room, assuring him that the servants will clean up the mess. When Dale leaves, the Duke calls his wife, Elena, and tells her with a smile that she has just come up with a suitable gift for him. Later, at Dale's birthday banquet, the nobles gather, commenting that all the nobles of the Black Duke region are present at this great banquet. The guests are wondering when the young lord will appear. On the second floor of the banquet hall, Dale sits alone, feeling bored by the noise, pointing out that the party seems to be running late. Think how exhausting it is for all these people to get together just to celebrate their birthday. He attributes his strange feeling to being used to poor treatment during his time as a hero, and that being treated like a young master still works for him. He is worried, not about the party, but because of his concern about the desk that he destroyed a few days ago. He remembers how his mana completely got out of control just by thinking about his past life as a hero, wondering with curiosity who left him that biography of the hero. He decides that his current body is too talented to give up the idea of learning necromancy. She wonders how to convince her father, remembering that she heard her father mention a gift. He thinks about asking to learn necromancy as a gift, but quickly dismisses the idea, realizing that the stares of his parents make it impossible. While he is lost in despair, his mother, Duchess Elena, arrives and tells him that he has waited long enough. Dale greets his mom, and she wishes him a happy 8th birthday. She notices that someone is standing behind her mother and asks who it is. His mother encourages him to go ahead and say hello. His mother introduces the guest. She is one of the old ladies of the Blue Magic Tower, an elf lady named Miss Sebia, the wise spirit and magic expert of the water element. His mother announces that Miss Sebia will be his new teacher. Dale is surprised when she steps forward, saying that she looks forward to working with him. "Your mother wishes you a happy birthday again." Dale quickly analyzes the situation. He has been appointed a master of a magic tower. He concludes that they plan to make him learn water element magic, known for its focus on defense and disruption, which confirms to him that his mother is really determined to keep him away from dark magic. Later, Miss Wise asks to speak to Dale alone, and he accepts. Sabia confirms to him that she was hired to teach him only water element magic. He shrewdly asks him if he feels disappointed, guessing that he wanted to learn another kind of magic. Dale is surprised by her insight, and Sabia explains that it is natural, that she wants to learn necromancy and dark magic from her father. He adds that the condition of the Black Duke's marriage is a well-known fact throughout the Empire. Sabia tells him the story. When the Duke was courting the Lady Elena, she was afraid of his dark reputation. For her, he promised that he would not pass on his work to his children. Sevia remembers the wedding day when the elders of the Black Magic Tower attended wearing pure white instead of their usual black robes. He explains that this marriage was founded on that vow, so learning dark magic will be difficult for now, but he promises her that he will find a way to convince Lady Elena in the future. He asks her to follow his teachings for the time being. Dale responds with a question. She reminds him that, as an elf, she values the laws of nature and asks him if he doesn't find black magic and necromancy, raising the dead, abominable. Sevia smiles, considering his question interesting. He answers with another question asking about the sacred power of priests who also raise the dead, and asks if that is considered the will of nature. Dale is surprised by the response. Sevia claims that, in her eyes, necromancy and resurrection are exactly the same. Dale realizes that she is very different from the usual stubborn elves, and thinks that she could be a good teacher. Sevia suggests that they start their lesson. He mentioned that he heard that he formed fragments of a mana circle a few days ago, and his first goal is to expand those fragments to form his first circle. Dale welcomes the idea, as all the magic books he read require the first circle, and this is a perfect opportunity to form it. Sevia asks him to put his hand on his heart and concentrate. As she begins to concentrate, Sevia explains that this world, unlike Earth, is full of mana. But unless a person is an ancient being like a dragon, it is impossible to handle raw and unprocessed mana. For this reason, one needs something to filter and process that pure mana, which is the circle of mana in the heart. She concludes the first lesson by explaining the process. He must gather the scattered fragments of the mana circle around his heart, assemble them, and then make the whole circle constantly rotate around the heart. Dale understands the explanation of his teacher, Sevia. Realizing that the circle is an engraving of the flow of mana in the heart, Sevia asks him to start slowly, practicing rotating the mana around his heart. Sevia notices that this usually takes a month, and advises her not to rush, but Dale interrupts her. Dale hesitantly tells her that he thinks he succeeded, and Sabia looks at him in shock. Xavier wonders in amazement if it is possible for a child who has just started training to create a full circle in a matter of minutes. She realizes that this can only happen if the child possesses a heaven-sent talent. Xavier asks Dale to try to release his magical power through the circle he formed. Dale agrees. While she thinks that a normal child would have a hard time just pushing mana through the circle, Dale, with Han Shang's awareness, thinks that this level is not enough to get revenge on the Empire or equal Duke Jackson. He remembers that in his past life, he used deadly combat magic thanks to the seals engraved on his body. But this time it's different. He realizes that his new body, which inherited the talent of the Black Magic Tower Master, accepts mana naturally. He thinks that maybe he can learn other types of magic besides the magic of the water element. Dale concentrates, directing the mana that attracted his body towards the tips of his fingers to create something. He imagines the most deadly fragment, the weapon that will strangle the Empire, and manages to force. Sevia notes with amazement that she managed to crystallize the magical power, forming an almost perfect ice ray. She explains to herself that usually the form of magic collapses when it condenses and is released. Sevia assumes that due to her focus on form, the spell might lack destructive power. Dale casts the spell. The ice beam hits the tree and explodes with immense force. The tree is completely shattered, leaving Sabia completely in shock. Sabia realizes that the ice was sharp and hard enough to pierce a tree, and confirms that this accuracy is impossible for an 8-year-old. Dale turns around with an innocent smile as Sabia wonders in shock about the truth of this child. Sabia contemplates the scene, amazed. She thought that, in the best case, she would move the mana, but she released magical power and combined it with the ice element. Although it was a basic spell, he executed it with amazing skill, using the surrounding cold to strengthen it. Dale innocently asks if he made a mistake. Setia thinks that the complexity of the magic formula she used is very advanced, and an innocent child could not create it unconsciously. He realizes that he used 3 formulas: rotation, acceleration, compression, collectively known as the golden ratio of military magic. She concludes that the fact that he cast such a perfect killing spell unconsciously is shocking. Give her the call again, and she replies that it's nothing. Sabia thinks she finally understands why the Duke, the Black Archmage, felt so remorseful. In a later scene, Xavier informs the Duke. He asks her, surprised, why does she say she can't teach Dale? The Duke argues that if the child reached the first circle in minutes, that is one more reason to teach him. Setia tells him that the moment Dale completed the first circle, he immediately executed a perfect killing spell. The Duke is surprised to hear this. Sabia confirms that it is hard to believe that an 8-year-old boy created a spell containing a perfect military formula, known as the golden ratio. She concludes her report with a shocking conclusion, telling the Duke that young Master Dale has a talent for killing. The Duke asked with a thoughtful air if Miss Sevia was saying that she could not teach Dale, especially as she is an old lady from the Blue Tower, who advocates against murder. Sevia denies this, confirming that, for this very reason, she feels the desire to guide him herself on the right path. The Duke remarks that, in that case, there is no reason to refuse. Sevia continues, explaining that young Master Dale seems to already have a magic he wishes to learn, which is the Duke's dark magic. And he seems surprised. Sevia continues, mentioning that she has heard the Black Magician's love story, and that she respects his promise to Lady Elena. But she claims that this promise does not give her the right to decide the future of her son, especially with the immense talent that the young lord possesses. Meanwhile, Dale was eavesdropping from the top of the stairs, but remarks that he can't understand a word they are saying. He looks frustrated, and assumes that they are definitely talking about him. He thinks to himself, surprised by the power his first spell had, and points out that even the wise lady of the tower seemed very surprised. He sighs and decides that he needs to be more careful about controlling his power from now on. His thoughts are interrupted by a voice calling, "Young Mr. Dale." He gets up from lying on the floor, smiling. He's a man in armor. Dale excitedly calls him Uncle Helmet and asks him why he is here. More importantly, he asks her where she's been. Helmet replies with a laugh that he was doing his duty to protect the duchy. He explains that he was sweeping up scary monsters, then lifts Dale into his arms. Dale smiles and understands that his uncle was conquering a masmorra. Dale thinks, explaining that in this world, the appearance of masmorras, or an avalanche of monsters, is a big event for any province. And this has been the case since the Demon King era. The damage caused by monster attacks in settlements is not minor. Therefore, the main duty of the knights of the province is to conquer the dungeons that have not yet been subjugated in the ancient lands of the Demon King, or eliminate the monsters that overflow due to a breach in the dungeon. Dale explains that the situation in the Duchy of Saxony is several times worse, and the reason is him, which means Ainchong in his previous life. Dale explains that after he defeated the Demon King in his previous life, the Duke of Saxony was ordered to subjugate the monsters in the Demon King's lands, which were granted to him as a fief, and turn them into imperial lands. He describes this in professional terms as passing the dirty work on to others. Back in the present, Dale asks Uncle Helmet not to get hurt. The latter is excited to hear the young lord's concern for him. At that moment, the Duke arrives. Dale calls his dad. Helmet greets the Duke, who thanks him with a smile for his hard work in the campaign. Duchess Elena arrives, wondering why everyone is gathered. Dale wonders what his mom wants. Elena excitedly calls Dale, telling him that she heard he reached the first circle, describing him as amazing while spoiling him. The Duke also smiles and congratulates Dale, telling him that if there is anything he wants, he should tell his father right away. Dale hesitates, wondering if asking to learn micromancy would seem too cunning. Try to think of a normal wish for a child his age. Then Dale suddenly announces that he wants a baby sister. The Duke and Duchess are surprised and blush. The Duke hesitantly and shamefacedly replies that he will try. Dale encourages them. Captain Helmet is outside the tower laughing, as one of the knights asks him to stop laughing over Dale's strange request. Meanwhile, Dale is in his bed, thinking about how exhausting it is to pretend to be innocent and pure at his true mental age. He feels tired and wonders if it's from using magic. Suddenly, an intense pain invades him. Dale sees Brandenburg in a nightmare from his past as ancien, greeting him and telling him that it's been a long time. Brandenburg teases him, calling him fickle and telling him how soft he has become so easily. She continues to tease him, asking if he is happy now with his new life, good parents and a home, implying that since his back is warm and his stomach is full, he doesn't care about revenge anymore. Then his face turns into a sinister smile, warning Ancient that the Empire will find him, and assures him that they will search for him relentlessly until they eliminate him and erase all traces of him from this world. Dale suddenly wakes up panting and finds the mana exploding violently around him. He clutches his chest in pain, feeling that his heart is about to explode. Dale realizes that this is the mana overflow he had only heard about and curses the damn Imperials. He thinks that they will not leave him alone even at the end. He had gone outside to get some cold air in the hope of feeling better, but the overflow is getting worse. The wise teacher suddenly appears, noticing that she seems to be suffering, which surprises Dale. Sabia diagnoses his condition as mana overflow, which is to be expected for a talented child like him. But he feels a dangerous feeling emanating from him. Setia places her hand on Dale to calm the mana, thinking that if resentment fills this child's magic in the future, it will be too late. Manages to calm the explosive mana. Dale notices that the mana overflow has disappeared. Sebia says his name, and he responds. Sebia explains to him that the essence of magic is a mirror of the heart, so the properties of the same spell differ depending on the caster. She tells him that her magic involves an innate talent to take life, a very dangerous talent. And as he says this, he hands her a book. And for this very reason, Syria feels that it is fortunate that she is the one who can teach him. Dale is shocked when he sees the book, realizing that it is a book of necromancy spells. Syria smiles, saying that she also feels that fate is what brought her to him, and wishes him a happy birthday. Dale is deeply moved, and hugs his teacher, who is surprised, and then pats him on the head, teasing him that he is still a spoiled child at this age. A few days later, Dale and Sabia go to the plains outside the North Gate. Dale asks about the rabbit. Sabia confirms the rabbit's presence, and asks her to remember the time she went to marry her father. Dale is getting ready. Dale focuses on the rabbit, and unleashes a deadly ice spell on him. Sabia watches him, noticing that, although he has just taken a life, there are no tremors on his fingers. She says his name, thinking that even with the same magic, the shape of each caster is still infinitely unique. The wise teacher continues her lesson, addressing what happened with the rabbit. She asks Dale if he knows why his fingers didn't tremble when he took a life. He replies that he's not sure, so she explains that magic at its core is like a mirror reflecting the mind. It materializes what is in the heart of the launcher through mana particles, so magic always reveals the inner thoughts of the user. Dale listens in silence. Sevia continues, explaining that even the names of spells like Wall of Fire are just a means to fix the imagination with a clear mental image, and that magic in different towers is no different from this principle. The red tower values order through power, while the blue tower values order through harmony. She notes that the philosophy of each tower is reflected in the form of its magic. He adds that there are other towers, besides the red and the blue, such as the black, the white and the green, each with its own philosophy. Then he suddenly stops, telling Dale that this lesson is still too early for him, leaving him confused. Sevia then goes on to teach him the first basics of necromancy, turning a corpse into a zombie, using the corpse of the rabbit he killed earlier. She explains that this magic is based on lifting corpses using mana for the caster to control. Dale applies the lesson, attaching magic threads to the head, spine and knees of the corpse. Dale manages to control the flow of magical energy, and his teacher praises him. He then asks her to try the next spell, and Dale agrees, as the zombie rabbit with a purple aura is in front of him. Dale focuses his energy to cast the frozen armor spell. He manages to lock the zombie rabbit in an icy armor. Wise note that the shape of the armor he created is very decent. She smiles and tells him that it's time to test his defensive ability, and prepares to cast his own ice spell. Sabia throws a powerful ice beam at the armored rabbit. The armor successfully blocks the attack before breaking, and Dale is glad of his success in blocking his teacher's attack. Sabia praises him again and realizes that he looks like he wants to say something, so she asks him if he has any requests. Dale replies very enthusiastically that yes. Dale asks his teacher to help him master also the magic of the water element along with necromancy. Sevilla smiles and then surprises him with a firm refusal. Dale is surprised to hear her reply. She explains that what she did today was just the basics of water magic. She explains that water magic, like other types of magic, requires a deeper understanding and advanced insight, as one delves deeper into it, which makes it more and more difficult. He adds that for a normal beginner, learning even one spell is difficult. As for the idea of becoming a dual magician, and using two types of magic at the same time, it is very difficult at his age, and seems to him an excessive ambition. Dale is shocked to hear the word ambition and thinks to himself how he still sees him as insufficient after all the skills he has shown him. He feels disappointed, remembering that she promised him that she would find the road together. While in this state, Sepia finishes the lesson for today. That night, Dale is in the studio, determined to prove he can handle it himself. He sinks into self-study, surrounded by a glow of dark magical energy, determined to learn magic, even without direct guidance. Later the next morning, his teacher Sabia calls him, noticing that he looks exhausted. Sabia asks him how he is and if he has lost any sleep, and Da replies that he stayed up late preparing something. Sevia advises him not to give in, and Dale agrees. Later, on the snowy plains, Dale begins to demonstrate what he prepared, fusing a circle of dark magic with ice magic, applying an improved spike-covered frozen armor to the zombie rabbit. Sevia watches him and comments that he has completely mastered it. Suddenly, the ice armor breaks and explodes into sharp fragments, which surprises Sevia, who wonders if it is an explosion of frost. But it doesn't end there. When the zombie rabbit starts gathering dark energy, the rabbit unleashes an explosion of corpses. The flying ice fragments combine with the dark explosion in a combined attack heading towards Sevia. Syria finds herself in a shower of ice fragments and dark energy. After the attack subsides, Dale stands in front of his teacher, who protected herself with a magic shield, and explains that she combined the explosion of corpses with the explosion of frost, which means that she combined the magic of water, dark magic. With a confident smile, holding an ice magic ball in one hand and a dark magic ball in the other, he asks if this is enough to be a dual magician. Sevia is silently stunned in the middle of the destruction and thinks that this is a style of attack that she has never seen before. She analyzes the attack, realizing that the frost explosion from the frozen armor merged with the corpse explosion to deal wider area damage. She notices that the sharp ice fragments and rabbit bones have become embedded everywhere like blades. She concludes that this technique seems designed only for killing, like something created by someone who spent his whole life on the battlefields. Sevia wonders with concern about the inner world of this child. Dale notes her silence, but suddenly turns around calling, "Sir Helmet." Knight Helmet approaches on horseback, greeting the young lord and Miss Sevia. Dale asks her if she has just returned from cleaning another dungeon. Helmet replies that this time they were subjugating a small group of monsters. He adds that the Black Cavalry had some difficulties. The Black Cavalry are known as the Invincible Knights of Duke Saxon, dominating the battlefield with aura-coated spears. And their leader is the Knight Commander, Sir Helm. It is also revealed that it is one of the 7 swords of the continent. Dale asks Helmet if he still remembers his promise to teach him fencing later, stating that there is no better person to learn from. Helmet laughs and welcomes Dale anytime. Dale promises that he will see him soon. Helmet confirms this and asks the young lord to return inside as it is cold, wishing him a safe return. After the lesson ends, teacher Sevia suggests returning to the tower, and Dale agrees. That night, the Duchess Elena and the Duke summon Miss Sevia to ask about something. Sevia directly informs them that the young Lord Dale has mastered the first circle for both necromancy and water magic. The Duke seems displeased and reminds her that he was definitely asked to teach her only water magic, which Sevia confirms. Sevia defends herself, saying that as a teacher, she wanted to teach the child what he wanted to learn, and Dale's desire was not limited to water magic. Duchess Elena intervenes, deciding that since this is Dale's wish, she asks Sevia to continue teaching her water magic. Sevia agrees, and the Duke and Duchess express their gratitude to her. Before leaving, Sevia offers her sincere apologies to Duchess Elena for making her break her vow to the Duke about not teaching or romancing Dale. After Sevia leaves, the Duchess sighs, commenting that her son is not an ordinary child. He is a dual magician at the age of 8. She admits that sometimes it's scary, but this is what makes him her son. The Duke calls her by name. The Duke surprises her by announcing that he wants to teach her necromancy to give her the same. He explains that he has multiple reasons. As a lord, he wants to give his heir the power to fulfill his duties. As a magician, he wants to take care of this talented disciple. And as a father, he wants to pass on his legacy to his son. The Duke apologizes profusely to his wife for breaking his promise to her. Alaya does not answer that she understands. The public perception of necromancy is still bad, and everyone whispers that it is the magic of death. She explains that this is the reason why she tried to avoid him at first, but now she asks him the opposite, that she raises Dale to become a necromancer strong enough to crush such people easily. The Duke, moved, asks her if she really understands, and she hugs him, confirming. He replies that he understands. He swears that he will bet everything he has to make his son the absolute best. Later, the Duke begins his first lesson with Dale, expressing his great disappointment in him. The Duke scolds his son, asking him if he has been moving the dead all this time, without even understanding what he is moving. Dale thinks to himself angrily that his teacher, Wise, only taught him the basics. So, what did you expect me to do? Dale explains that as soon as he showed his father the basics he learned, his father immediately took him to the Black Duke's magic workshop, located in the basement of the castle. The Duke sternly tells Dale that while she is training with him, she should completely forget about using such primitive magic. The Duke announces that the first lesson will begin with the memorization of the complete skeletal and muscular structure of every living creature. Dale is surrounded by huge stacks of books and weakly responds to his father with an okay. Dale realizes that these books are highly specialized texts that only doctors would have found in his old world. After spending days memorizing every word, his dad finally tells him he's done with the basics. Dale is happy that he will finally learn practical magic. The Duke confirms that the real lesson will begin now. They stand in front of a goblin corpse, and Dale wonders in surprise. The Duke smiles, noticing his son's confusion. The Duke explains that an unqualified mage can only move the corpse of a sword master as a simple zombie, while a skilled mage can create a death knight from the corpse of an ordinary infantryman. The Duke points to the goblin corpse in front of him, saying that they have an undead soldier here right now. He then asks Dale defiantly, "How will you move him?" Dale begins his attempt to move the goblin's corpse, but realizes that it is much more difficult than the rabbit. The goblin is a bipedal creature with many bones and requires much more complex monothread connections. He struggles a lot to control the corpse, which moves very slowly and rigidly. He feels that he is controlling a complicated puppet. Dale wonders if he made a mistake by using de rigor mortis magic to increase the corpse's defense, as the joints and muscles have become too stiff to move, and he is left helpless, not knowing what to do. The Duke intervenes, explaining to Dale that the idea of speeding up the rigor mortis to strengthen the corpse was a good one, but its drawback is to restrict the movement too much. The Duke asks his son to observe, then takes control of the corpse himself with an aura of dark magic. Dale is surprised to see his father easily animate the corpse. The Duke explains that the rib cage, by its nature, is an organ whose function is to protect the internal viscera. Question: since the dead don't need to protect their insides, why do we keep it the way it is? The Duke immediately changes the shape of the corpse, turning the rib cage into sharp blades and protruding claws. The Duke explains to his son that he must understand the structure of the creature in front of him, then change its shape to fit his purpose. He concludes that this is the basis of dark magic. Dale calls his father with admiration. Dale asks his father about the philosophy that the Black Tower follows. The Duke answers with a word, truth. The Duke explains that the truth is always found inside death, and for this reason, they must understand the weight of life in order to reach that truth. As the Duke places his hand on Dale's shoulder, a painful memory of his past life as ancien comes back to him, where a man was kneeling before him in the middle of the flames, begging the great hero to spare his life. Ancien ignores the pleas and raises his blood-stained sword to kill him. This memory sends a shiver down Dale's spine, and the Duke notices her pale face and asks if she's okay. Dale quickly shakes his head, and he assures his father that he is fine. The narrative explains that as Dale's magical abilities grew day by day, news that Duke Saxon was teaching him black magic spread throughout the empire. The Duke's violation of his vow, his promise of marriage, caused a great commotion in noble circles. And the person responsible for this, Dale, became the center of intense scrutiny and attention of many, including the nobles of the empire. the nobles of the empire who began to watch him relentlessly. A few weeks later, at the duchy's training camp, Dale is shown seriously training in fencing with a wooden sword against Uncle Helmet. They exchange fierce blows, and Dale manages to pull the sword out of Helmet's hand. In the midst of Helmet's surprise, his sword falls to the ground. Helmet laughs, praising the young lord, and calling his movement impressive. Dale replies that it is impossible for a knight like him to drop his sword so easily. Dale accuses Helmet of taking it easy. Helmet flatly denies this, insisting that he was using practical fencing, and that any normal person would have died from a single blow. Helmet praises Dale's exceptional swordsmanship, commenting that it's a pity he's a magician. He adds that since wizards are always protected by guards and defensive magic, there is no real need for Dale to train that hard, and asks him why he is doing it. Helmet notices Dale's bandaged hand and advises him, "Don't push yourself to the point of injury." Dale confirmed that he has a reason, of course. Dale explains with a smile that it would be pathetic for Duke Saxon's son to rely only on guards and defensive magic. He adds that having the opportunity to personally train under one of the 7 swords of control, it is something that cannot be missed. Helmet laughs out loud, impressed by Dale's response, and says that he has no greater desire than to have a son like him. Dale smiles, saying that the day has finally come when he receives high praise from Helmet. At that moment, Duchess Elena arrives, commenting on her high spirits. "Give her a quick hello." Dale asks her why she came to this cold place, and she replies that she came to see how hard her son is working. She adds that she also has news to share with him, and reminds him of the birthday present he asked for. Dale looks confused, trying to remember the gift he asked for. Flashback shows him asking his parents for a baby sister. Dale is shocked to hear this. Her mother smiles and tells her that she will have to take good care of her little sister. Dale responds with overwhelming enthusiasm that he certainly will. 10 months later, Dale is shown watching his newborn sister. His mother asks him if he surprises her, and he answers yes, amazed at how small she is. Dale touches the baby's cheek, commenting that he still can't believe she's his sister and describes her as amazing. Her mother asks if she wants to hold her, and she hesitates nervously. His mother encourages him not to back down, and the Duke assures him that holding her is not difficult, and that he found it easy when he tried. Dale holds his baby sister, and his mom asks him what he thinks, saying she looks like him. Duchess Elena notes with surprise that the baby cried a lot when her dad held her, but she hasn't made a sound in Dale's arms, while the baby is smiling peacefully. The Duke asks his son Dale how he feels holding his baby sister in his arms. Dale replies to his father that although she is as light as a feather, she feels a great weight. The Duke explains to her that this is the weight of life, and advises her to never forget this feeling. The Duchess reminds her son Dale that it is time for his lesson, and that Miss Wise is waiting for him. The scene changes to the snowy plains, where the wise teacher tells Dale that they will be holding a practical training duel today. Dale asks hesitant if he can really attack her, and Sabia encourages him not to hesitate, and to use everything he has. Dale agrees, and begins to prepare a magic circle. Sabia prepares herself too, thinking that she will see how much she has improved. Dale begins the attack by throwing a large ice beam at his teacher. Sabia receives the attack easily, catches the ice ray in her hand, and shatters it, commenting that it is too slow for an opening move. She teases him, while holding a remaining ice fragment, while Dale is shocked by her reaction. Sabia surprises Dale by throwing the fragment at him forcefully, yelling at him to lift his defensive barrier. The ice projectile hits the ground, causing an explosion at Dale's location. Dale gets up from the ground, thinking that if he had not managed to block the attack, he would have been seriously injured. Sevia watches him, thinking with admiration how he managed to cast the ice shield spell in that brief moment to protect himself. Sevia describes his performance as excellent and asks him to try again. Dale responds by focusing on a new magic formula, Ice Wall. Dale places his hands on the ground and executes the spell, ordering the ice wall to rise. Sebia is surprised by this move, wondering why she is using a defensive spell, like the ice wall in the middle of a duel. Sebia realizes that Dale used a formula to strengthen the molecular bonds of the ice, significantly increasing its density, to make it so hard, like steel. She continues to wonder about the reason for this defensive move, guessing that maybe she needs a moment to catch her breath after her last attack. But behind the wall, Dale was preparing a new spell. Ice Explosion, the fragmentation formula. Then he orders the wall to explode. The huge ice wall explodes, and Xavier realizes with surprise that the explosion is designed to throw ice fragments in all directions, and she is in the line of fire. Dale celebrates the success of his attack, thinking about the spell he just unleashed. It was a compound spell, an extremely hard ice barrier, which he compressed again, and then applied explosive magic. He explains in his thoughts that because he first strengthened the molecular bonds of the ice, and then compressed it, he effectively turned it into a grenade. Dale looks confidently towards the rising smoke, believing that this time it will be difficult for his teacher to dodge the attack. Dale sees his teacher's figure in the smoke and asks worriedly, then cries out her name worriedly when he sees her body completely freezing and then shattering. But the real Sebia suddenly appears smiling behind the ice statue that looks like her, asking if he called her. Dale is shocked, realizing that what he saw being done to Nikos was just an illusion. Sebia praises her excellent skill when a small cut appears on her cheek from the attack. He admits that he never imagined that a magician with only the first circle could hurt an elder of the towers. Dale quickly apologizes, insisting he didn't mean to hurt her. Sebia assures him that she knows and adds that she is actually grateful for the injury he gave her today, which leaves him very confused. The wise teacher explains that she is grateful for the wound and asks Dale if this doesn't mean that he trusts her enough to show all his strength. Sabia kneels before him, stating that, as a teacher, she could not be happier. Dale asks her if she is telling the truth, and she responds, of course, calling him her excellent student. Sabia pats Dale on the head, expressing her amazement at his creation of such a magic formula. Dale replies that all the credit goes to his teachings. Dale falls silent, noticing that his teacher has lost herself in his thoughts. Later, the Duke asks Miss Sebia about the cut on her cheek. She replies that it is a wound she received due to her inexperience during a lesson with the young lord. Praising the indescribable sharpness of the spell, the Duke expresses that he constantly feels indebted to her, but Sebia insists that teaching a talented student is a pleasure for him. The Duke takes the opportunity to shamelessly ask her for another favor. She tells him to speak freely. The Duke explains that they have received reports that a horde of orcs has crossed the mountain range and entered their lands. Although it is a minor raid that a small unit of knights could handle, he has decided to have Dale participate in this battle. She immediately objects, saying that the young lord is not ready yet. The Duke clarifies that he is not asking him to excel on the battlefield, but that it is the duty of the Saxon family to be responsible for the security of the territory. He claims that, as the eldest son, he is no exception and should understand this duty. While Evia is wondering worriedly what to do, the Duke informs her that he will grant his personal artifact to Dale, and asks her to guide him so that he can control that power. It is explained that the artifact contains immense power and thoughts, and can be used by sacrificing life or mana. The greater the power, the more difficult and dangerous it becomes, and in extreme cases, it can lead to death. The Duke explains that the Saxon family has wielded and controlled these powers for generations. The scene changes to the front of the castle's artifact armory. The Duke asks Dale, as the eldest son, if he shouldn't prepare for the upcoming battle. Dale is shocked to hear the word battle, but immediately gets excited as he realizes that he will finally go to battle. The Duke confirms that he will join the subjugation force to defeat the orc horde. The Duke opens the door of the armory, telling her that before that, she must learn to control the dark power of the Saxon family. Dale is impressed by the armory full of artifacts, and his father explains that these are the artifacts of the Demon Lord's domain that they manage. He adds that they are relics obtained by reclaiming the domain of the Demon Lord from the time of his ancestors, and should not be compared to ordinary tools. Dale feels the power of the magic emanating from them. The Duke confirms that each of them is dangerous, and warns him not to touch them carelessly before he learns to control them. But while the Duke was talking, he turns around and finds that Dale has disappeared, and wonders where he went. Dale had already come in thinking that he needs an artifact that suits him. Suddenly, he hears a voice from one of the artifacts calling him, saying that he feels hatred in him, and that he wants revenge. Other artifacts join in, urging him to choose them to destroy his enemies together, while another calls him a coward and demands that he use it to destroy them. He realizes that these dark power artifacts are resonating with the grudge he carries, but he rejects them all in his mind, believing that none of them satisfy him and that he needs something much stronger. He stops suddenly, noticing a cloak next to him, and wonders how long he's been there. Dale recognizes the cloak that appeared next to him, realizing that it is the Cloak of Shadows. He immediately remembers that it was a high-level artifact used by Duke Berta, the commander of the Demon King's army, that he faced in his previous life. The cloak's ability was to manifest shadows, which made fighting it extremely difficult. He gets excited and decides to put it on immediately, but his father shouts his name, warning him at the last moment. He ignores the warning, and as soon as he puts it on, his consciousness is transported to a dark space, where he hears a voice screaming inside him repeatedly, "I'm hungry." From the outside, the Duke observes the scene, commenting that it has begun. Think that this shadow is not ordinary. In the past, the users of the cloak summoned shadow storms and moved them like living beings. And in order to use this shadow creature, the user must completely subjugate it. Dales confronts the shadow creature manifested within his consciousness, realizing that subjugating it will not be easy. Outside, the Duke and the wise teacher are anxiously watching the huge ball of shadow enveloping Dales. Sabia expresses her concern because a long time has passed, and the Duke warns her that if the delay continues, he will lose his head and be swallowed by the shadow creature. Sevia is distressed to hear this, and the Duke decides that they have no choice but to intervene and remove him by force. But before they can intervene, the shadows suddenly dissipate, and Dale appears with the new cloak. His father calls him, and he responds calmly. Sevia rushes to check on him, expressing her deep concern, but Dale assures her that he is fine, and that all he felt was just a simple prick. The Duke wonders in a state of shock how he can be completely well. The Duke continues to wonder in amazement how the body of a small child can handle such a powerful artifact. Dale interrupts them with a smile, asking his father if he can try more of these artifacts. The Duke and Xavier are extremely surprised by his request. The Duke hesitantly accepts, and Dale enthusiastically thanks him. Your exploration of the artifacts in the armory continues for a full day. A few days later, at the Duchy's training camp, Sir Helmet notices the cloak Dale is wearing, and recognizes it immediately, asking, "Isn't that the Cloak of Shadows?" Dale confirms it. Helmet comments that this artifact is known to be difficult to handle and asks how he is. Dale replies that it doesn't bother him except for a slight prick. Helmet finds this very strange. Dale smiles and makes up a story, saying that the cape was probably lonely, and that she clung to him as soon as she saw him. Maybe because she wanted to be his friend. Helmet laughs at the idea, commenting on the young lord's kind heart, foreseeing something as dangerous as a lonely creature. Dale thanks Sir Helmet for his words as the shadow creature appears at his feet, being forcefully repressed under his foot. He tells her that he has a request, and Helmet replies that he is ready to do anything the young lord asks. Dale requests a real duel as combat training. Helmet enthusiastically accepts, promising that he will do everything possible not to disappoint the young lord. As they prepare for the duel, Dale thinks that choosing one of the 7 swords of the continent as a training partner might be overkill, as their mere presence is overwhelming. Helmet notices his tension and assures him that he will only use basic fencing without aura. Dale thinks that Helmet is being lenient with him and that a true gentleman should fight with all his heart. He prepares to attack, and the shadows emerge from his cloak as they explain their thoughts that the real purpose of this fight is to train in the domain of the Cloak of Shadows under the guise of combat practice. He adds that the true value of this artifact will be determined by its ability to turn shadows into powerful weapons. He sees this training as necessary and launches a shadow sword bombing attack towards Helmet. Helmet gets the attack, and Dale is shocked when he realizes that Helmet shattered the swords with his sheer physical strength. Without even using aura, he is amazed by this terrifying power. Helmet laughs, rating the young lord's performance as excellent, and then announces that it is his turn to attack. Dale quickly retreats back, preparing to defend, but Helmet is surprised when sharp shadow thorns sprout from the ground to block his path. Helmet comments with admiration on the cape's ability to execute ambushes like this. Helmet swings his sword at Dale's shadow defenses, and Dale groans from the force of the blow. Dale blocks Helmet's successive attacks. Being pushed back by the force of Helmet's punches, Helmet is stunned, wondering how he managed to block his punch, pointing out that his punches were strong enough to break ordinary swords. Helmet realizes that a high-level artifact is really something different. Helmet screams excitedly, asking Dale to continue for 10 more rounds, and they continue to collide. That day, after the training was over, the ordinary gentlemen who were watching commented that they never lasted more than 2 rounds against Commander Helmet, and that they felt an indescribable wall between them and Dale. A few days later, on the day of departure, Duchess Eleanor was still worried, telling Dale that she could not send him to such a dangerous place. He tries to reassure her, reminding her that her father and Sir Helmet will be with him. Her mother continues to express her concern that she will potentially get hurt. He addresses his mother earnestly, stating that he must become stronger so that he can take responsibility for the Duke's family one day. He looks at his little sister Liz, who is sleeping, and says that he needs to gain more experience now so that the time will come when he will be able to protect her, her father and her mother. He pleads with his mother to allow him to become strong enough to protect her. Elena is moved by his words and agrees, saying goodbye to him and asking him to take care of himself. He promises her that he will be back soon. At dawn, at the temporary base, Sir Helmet informs the Duke that the troops are ready to leave. The Duke asks Dale to give the order to march instead of him. Dale is surprised, and his father explains to him that the Black Cavalry, the pride of his family, will be the force Dale led one day. The Duke claims that these men are already his knights. Dale realizes that they are not his father's knights, but his own, and that this is his first battle as Dale. Convinced that this time will be different, he announces that the time has come to leave. He raises his fist and gives the order to the troops, calling them the proud swords of the Saxon house. The knights chant their response, declaring that they are following the young lord's order. Orders are given for the units to take their positions. It is explained that the force of 250 knights will join the elite guard unit stationed in the White Mountains, known as the Winter Guards. The battle plan is explained. The horde of orcs to be subjugated is around 1,000. The orcs have crossed the upper current of the Saxon River, escaping the cold and hunger, and will soon head towards the lower current. Therefore, the plan is for the Duke's forces to cross the lower stream first in order to launch a surprise attack. Since the only way for February 1950 men to cross a deep river quickly is with magical assistance, the wise teacher steps forward and asks everyone to move away, announcing that she will create an ice bridge. Dale thanks him, appreciating that he comes to help in a battle despite his creed of peace and nonviolence. Sabia creates a huge ice bridge over the river and tells the troops that they can cross now. The Duke thanks him, and Sabia wishes him victory. Dale says goodbye to his teacher and sets off on his horse. She immediately observes him, smiling, and thinks to herself how she has a student who makes his teacher care so much about him. A short time later, at the orcs' temporary base, the Winter Guard's archer unit lies in ambush and launches a volley of flaming arrows into the camp. The explosive arrows fall on the orcs, causing chaos and destruction. An orc screams with rage in the middle of the flames. Sir Helmet orders the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Knight battalions to attack in wedge formation. Helmet asks Dale for his opinion as he rides beside him. Dale analyzes the scene, noting that the horses are moving at 40 kilometers per hour. He adds that the weight of the knight and the horse gives them tremendous acceleration. He concludes his analysis by saying that the tactic of the 3 to 4 meter long lance, supported by the knight's aura, makes it impossible for even orcs to stop them. The knights easily break the ranks of the orcs, and Dale remarks that the battle is one-sided. The Duke agrees, confirming that this is the power of the knights of the duchy. Helmet warns the young lord not to relax, stating that this is just the beginning. The fierce battle continues between the knights and the orcs. Helmet explains that the ambush was successful, but it was not enough to annihilate them. The plan now is to retreat. regroup, and then eliminate them with successive attacks. The signal to withdraw is given, and the troops begin to retreat. As the knights retreat, the orcs are left confused. 2 orcs roar, and one throws a spear at a straggling knight. The knight is hit in the arm, and the spear pierces his horse's neck, which causes a gentleman to fall to the ground. Dale stops and looks towards the gentleman. Helmet coldly comments on his bad luck in retiring. The Duke considered the fate of the knight sealed, noting that his army suffered a loss. While Dales wondered if that meant the knight was already dead, the Duke adds that a proud sword from the House of Saxony has been exposed to the enemy. Dale turns abruptly, wondering why they're standing there staring. He sees an orc running to finish off the wounded knight, and realizes that if he goes down the slope on horseback, he will be too late. He closes his eyes and concentrates, deciding that he needs to penetrate the orc's thick skin from this distance. He thinks that orc's skin is tougher than other monsters, so the current magic formula needs modification. He continues to concentrate, realizing that he must penetrate the orc's thick skin from his distance. He decides to modify the current formula of the ice ray, thinking about adding a bullet formula, capable of accurate anti-personnel sniper shots to it. He also decides to add a sniper rifle formula to support the bullet formula and increase its efficiency. Reach out and cast the new spell, a modified ice beam, with sniper rifle properties. The magic ice projectile is instantly fired, penetrating the head of the orc that was attacking the wounded knight. The orc drops dead, and Helmet from his position notes that the accuracy was high despite the long distance. Dale immediately mounts his horse downhill. Sir Helmet calls him surprised, wondering where he is going. Duke Jackson stops him, ordering him to leave him alone, which surprises Helmet. The Duke smiles, thinking that Dale's creation of a unique formula at such a young age, and that he possesses being such a lethal power, means Dale's inner world may already be complete. Dale reaches the wounded knight, and realizes that the other orcs have regrouped. He realizes that he has 2 problems. The first is the gentleman in front of him, who has panicked and cannot get up. The second problem is that its unique formula is too long, which makes it ineffective in direct combat. He realizes that he needs to cut the formula just as mathematical formulas are shortened. Think of a short name like as 98 Magnum. He discovers that this name is still too long, and decides that as Paulette say at that moment, another orc pounces on the knight in panic. Dale casts his new spell, Unspolet. The ice bullet penetrates the orc's head. The orc falls right behind the knight, who looks at Dale in terror, wondering why the young lord is here for him. Dale stands before the collapsed gentleman, and tells him not to worry. He smiles and tells her that the Saxon house never abandons a sword that shows loyalty. The gentleman is deeply moved. The rest of the orcs roar and close in, and Dale prepares to unleash his magic. He uses his shadow cloak, unleashing shadow leaves to attack the orcs. He smiles and orders his shadows to devour them. An orc looks up in terror. The shadows descend on the orcs, tearing them to pieces. The shadows devour and grind the orcs, leaving their skeletons behind. He turns to the last remaining orc, and asks with a smile why he hasn't fled yet, then casts the spell on Spaller. After finishing with the last orc, he comments that things are fine now. The gentleman calls him, admitting that his legs will not move because of fear. Sorehound arrives with the rest of the knights found, carrying it to the wounded gentleman. Dale tells her that she's finally arrived, and will leave the rest to him. Helmet orders all the knight battalions to attack simultaneously, shouting for the Saxon house. The knights charge, adding a new shout to his battle for the young Lord Dale. A short time later, at the Saxon base, the Duke congratulates his son Dale, telling him that the operation of subjugating the orcs has been successfully completed. After the battle is over, the Duke summons his son Dale, explaining that he has a question about the recent subjugation. The Duke sternly asks his son for the real reason behind his foolish charge alone on the enemy lines. Dale swallows saliva, wondering to himself why he is being reprimanded. The Duke insists on knowing the reason. Dale reminds his father of what he told him earlier, that the Knights of the House of Saxony are the force he will one day lead. Based on that, he explains that he simply carried out a mission worthy of that role. The Duke rejects this logic, calling it weak. Dale is shocked, thinking that his father is known to care about his knights, wondering why he is acting like this now. Dale decides to answer, asking his father why he, the Duke, just stood by watching one of the knights of the duchy die. The Duke explains that the northern front of the Saxony house, which borders the Demon King's lands, endures countless attacks from monsters, and the knights fighting there do not expect anyone to come and save them. Give him object, saying that, nevertheless, he wanted to save a gentleman who showed loyalty to his father. The Duke responds with a deep question, asking if Dale's meant how you did it one day. The Duke continues his lesson, explaining that knights must think and act for themselves in order to survive on the battlefield. And by intervening, Dale made them believe that someone else will always come to save them. The Duke wonders how many knights can survive with this dependent mentality. The Duke clarifies his own duty. He only intervenes when the knights are faced with a threat beyond their ability to handle. This is the noble duty that strangers must endure. Dale finds himself unable to answer, realizing that he had forgotten a principle that he himself, like in Siang, used to live in the past. Despite this, and because Dale seems determined in his posture, the Duke smiles and places his hand on his son's shoulder. He tells her that the way he turned his conviction into action left a strong impression on her, and advises her to never forget it. Then he tells her to go back to the castle. The story of the Duke's young son running into a horde of orcs to save a son only night spreads, becoming a pasture for gossip in the Empire. Rumors are exaggerated, and some claim that the young master annihilated 1,000 orcs with his own hands. The story, described as 9/10 truth and 1/10 exaggeration, spreads like wildfire throughout the Empire. And although Dale himself found it embarrassing, this event brought a new wind of change within the duchy. A few days later, upon Dale's arrival at the duchy knights training camp, all the knights welcome him, kneeling down in a sign of respect. He feels ashamed and asks them not to do that, but Sorehammer tells him to stay proud. Helmet addresses the knights, declaring that they must become stronger for their young master's future. The knights cheer, affirming their obedience. Dale comments on how enthusiastic they are. A maid named He approaches him. Eve informs him that it's time for the earlier house guests to arrive. He thanks her and prepares to greet them. Think about how they will receive special guests. It is revealed that the guests are from the warrior house, earlier, which was a large noble family in the kingdom of Teutonia, led by the sword god Bartle. The introduction to the warrior hunt Erlard continues, explaining that when the Empire waged its war of unification, the kingdom of Teutonia fell, and with the death of the sword god, Bartle, the family collapsed. Back at the castle, Dale notices that Sir Helmet seems lost in thought. He approaches him, guessing that he must be thinking about the sword god, the man who guided Helmet himself along the path of chivalry. Helmet admits that it leaves a bitter taste in his mouth. The Duke notices that Dale arrived on time and must have been training, which Dale confirms. At that moment, a servant announces the arrival of the guests, and the Duke orders that they be shown the utmost respect. Two ladies enter, Vanessa O'Hart and her young daughter Charlotte, taking a bow. The Duke praises his arrival without escorts. Vanessa Erlard introduces herself, humbly greeting the Duke of Saxony. The Duke welcomes you. Vanessa then introduces her daughter, Charlotte O'Hart, but Charlotte mutters angrily, "Mother." Dale wonders about her strange reaction. Suddenly, he yells at his mother, asking her why she is bowing down to people like them. Vanessa panics and screams her daughter's name. As Vanessa tries to silence her daughter, the Duke calmly intervenes, appreciating that they must have had a long and tiring trip. The Duke asks Dale to accompany Lady Charlotte and show her the castle, and he agrees. He politely extends his hand to show Charlotte the way, but she slaps him, violent, and screams at him not to touch her. Dale is shocked as the Duke and Duchess, holding their baby, look on in surprise. Charlotte scoffs, calling the imperial nobles rude. Vanessa yells at her daughter and orders her to apologize to the young lord immediately. Charlotte ignores her and angrily leaves the room, while giving her the call, asking her to wait. After Charlotte slams the door shut, Vanessa apologizes profusely for her daughter's rudeness, explaining that it's not usually like that, but she's reacting strongly because of something that happened recently. Duchess Elena asks him what happened. Vanessa explains that not long ago, Count Brandenburg, a holy knight, was appointed inspector of his lands. It continues that Count Brandenburg is as famous for being a master of the sacred sword as for his title, the Pig King. He is obsessed with getting an heir with superior talent, coveting any skilled swordswoman, and forcing himself on them. He adds that he does this even if the girl has not yet reached the age of majority. He reveals that they barely managed to escape before he could lay his hands on his daughter, but it was impossible to erase those memories. He admits that he would do anything to protect his daughter, but as a fallen noble, he lacks the power. She begs the Duke to accept her daughter Charlotte as a maid in the Saxon house so that that man, Brandenburg, can never touch her again. Meanwhile, Dale finds Charlotte at the training camp, and he wonders why he came here, guessing that the blood of gentlemen runs through his veins. He asks her if she knows where she's going, and she says no. She asks him if his hand, which he slapped, is okay. He replies that he is fine, and tells her not to worry. Charlotte is relieved. Dale notes that she was crying earlier, concluding that she is still thinking about what happened, and that, despite her tough appearance, she is still just a child. Suddenly, Charlotte turns and unsheathes her sword, declaring that, in that case, she must duel with it. She orders Dale from Saxony to disembark. I brought his sword. Dale is surprised, thinking to himself that this girl, Charlotte, does what she wants. Charlotte demands a duel from him. Dale asks why, and she replies that she's heard a lot of rumors. Charlotte explains that she heard that he is an amazing man who defeated 1,000 orcs alone and saved a fallen knight. Dale thinks that the story is not exactly like that and feels embarrassed by the exaggeration. She goes on to say that by defeating him, who is said to have no parallel in the Empire, she will show the whole world that she is stronger and prove that she can protect her family from that man. Dale wonders who he's referring to. Charlotte says his name, the master of the sword, Count Brandenburg. Dale is shocked to hear the name. He boils internally, remembering that he is the other bastard of the Empire who stabbed him in the back. He is surprised to hear his name in this situation. He thinks that since their goal is the same, she could be a good ally. But he decides that he needs to give her a reality lesson first. Charlotte looks confused as Dale walks away to pick up a gun, telling her that she's just a little girl who doesn't know anything. He tells her to attack him with everything she has. Charlotte angrily replies that she definitely will. Charlotte lunges with an attack, his rapier glowing with a green aura. But Dale blocks his attack with his sword. The clash continues between them with quick blows. Dale continues to block his successive attacks with ease. He analyzes her style, noticing that every time she blocks his attack, she uses a quick flick of her wrist to launch a counterattack. He also notes that he uses a minimal amount of aura. He concludes that he is using aura to be able to control the rapier, which is too big for his body. He thinks that just as magicians generate mana from circles, knights surpass their limits by gathering aura inside their bodies. He blocks another blow, thinking to himself that the blood will speak. Unsurprisingly, blood does not lie, referring to his family's legacy. The fierce fight continues, and Charlotte continues to attack. Charlotte smiles confidently, thinking that if this is all her level, then she has the advantage. Charlotte recalls his memories. Her father died before she was born, and her mother told her stories about him every night. Her mother told her that she should, instead, protect the family as the proud daughter of the sword god. She thinks about her sword that never stopped. Even when her homeland fell and her family collapsed, she angrily asks herself, why is this guy, Dale, constantly blocking her? Charlotte feels that something is wrong. She lunges again, but Dale stops her blade with a perfect stop, stunning her. He makes a quick move, disarming her as his gun flies out of his hand. Her sword falls to the ground, and Charlotte falls to her knees, wondering how she, the daughter of the sword god, can't win. He approaches her. She looks at him with tears in her eyes, and he tells her that the reason is that she is not the god of the sword. He explains that the pride she carries as the daughter of the sword god is not bad, but he sternly tells her that in her current state, she will never be able to protect her family from that man. He assures her that the sword of the sword master, Brandenburg, is tens of times stronger even than his, Dale's, in its current state. Charlotte cries when she hears this reality. Charlotte asks, still broken, what is she supposed to do? Dale stands in front of her and declares that he, Dale de Saxon, will bet the name of the ducal family and will become the guardian of the earlier family. Charlotte is shocked to hear this. He continues his offer, explaining that until the day he gets strong enough to defeat that man, Brandenburg, he and the House of Saxon will become the shield that protects her. Charlotte asks him why. He replies that his sword, his talent, is worth all this. He then asks her to swear to become a sword for him and the Saxon house. Charlotte smiles slightly, saying that she would not refuse such an offer. She kneels before him reverently, declaring on behalf of Charlotte, "O heart, your oath on your honor as a gentleman." The narration comments that, although this may seem like a simple promise between two children, the determination it contained was worthy of being called an oath. Later that day, at Duke Saxon's office, Dale informs his father that at the request of Lady O'Hart and Miss Charlotte, she has become a lady-in-waiting maid for the ducal family. The Duke points out that Charlotte immediately agreed, which was unexpected, and asked her what happened between them. Dale replies that he made a promise on behalf of the Saxon house that they would protect the family. The Duke asks his son if he used the family name just because he felt sorry for his circumstances, which Dale denies. The Duke asks what Dale is looking to gain from this. Dale explains that Charlotte is the only descendant of the sword god, and her talent, as expected, is exceptional. He reveals that he obtained a loyalty oath from Miss Charlotte, and that what he seeks to gain is a sword god, to be used for the benefit of the Saxon house. The Duke smiles and admires what Dale is planning. Dale thinks to himself with a sly smile that with the only descendant of the sword god, here, this is a good blow against that bastard from Brandenburg. The scene changes to Malberg, the ancient capital of Teutonia, where Count Brandenburg screams in rage, smashing his furniture. He angrily wonders how dare they make the first move, while one of his subordinates apologizes. He berates them, calling them stupid fools, and wonders how they failed to catch a little brat. The subordinate explains that they sent assassins, but it seems that they were killed before reaching the alien lands. They assume that Charlotte Earlhart is the one who finished them. Brandenburg calls them useless fools and walks towards his sacred sword, Durendal. He remembers days gone by. He turns to his sacred sword, Durendal. He describes the sword as his beautiful fiancée and asks her to wait a little while, promising that she will bring the perfect lineage to succeed him and will use this sword no matter the cost. He orders that the Thieves' Guild be summoned and that someone be sent to the Duchy of Saxon. He declares that he will pay any price, even 1,000 gold pieces, to bring that filly, Charlotte, before him. It's been a week since Charlotte swore her oath of allegiance. She settles in the Duke's castle, noticing the marked do with her home in Teutonia, and undergoes rigorous training as a lady-in-waiting. The daily combat with Dale also becomes part of his routine. Sir Helmet, who oversees the training, asks them if they are ready. Dale replies that he is ready, and Charlotte replies in the affirmative. Again, Helmet smiles and announces the start of the duel. They immediately begin to collide. The training duel continues with an exchange of quick punches. The duel between Dale and Charlotte continues, and Sir Hammer watches them, thinking to himself. Helmet wonders if this is really a duel between children. He admits that his level has not yet reached that of the knights, but he feels a terrible killing intent and speed coming from them. The duel escalates, and Dale uses his cape to distract Charlotte. Charlotte feels stressed, but she doesn't let it stop her, aiming an attack. "I need Dale." Helmet suddenly intervenes, stopping Charlotte's attack, and also grabs Dale before he can counterattack. He praises her excellent performance and tells Lady Charlotte that she did well. She dismisses his compliments and seriously asks him what he is missing. He asks her if she knows the essence of using a foil. She replies, "To drill." He denies this, explaining that the essence lies in the legs, that is, in the footwork. He explains that Dale managed to close the distance and avoid his lunge at the same time. And at that moment, she should have retreated to create distance and look for another opportunity. He adds that with a foil, the more the arm is bent and extended to apply force, the more the blade vibrates, making accurate piercing difficult. Helmet concludes that he needs to rebuild his foundations. Charlotte gets angry upon hearing this. Helmet tells her that he noticed earlier that her posture and footwork were unconventional and untidy. Charlotte replies that the reason is that she never had a proper teacher to guide her. Helmet smiles and tells him that as long as he is here, he will have to fix his strange piercing posture. Charlotte is angered by his description. Helmet laughs, admitting that he was teasing her because she's so cute. Dale watches them, thinking about how quickly Charlotte will develop under the guidance of Helmet, one of the 7 swords of the continent, and decide that he must also work hard so that she does not surpass him. Later, Dale reviews his magic training. Think that the process of building a mana circle is the same, feeling the flow of mana around the heart, waiting for a stable path to form, and then engraving the shape of the magic ring. The problem is that this process can take decades. In a scene with her teacher, Sabia, she is surprised when Dale tells her that he has already completed the 2nd circle. He explains in his thoughts that the rotational speed of mana in this world is measured in RPM, revolutions per minute. Usually, the magicians of the 1st circle have a speed of 300 revolutions per minute. It reveals that its current speed is 2,000 revolutions per minute for the 1st circle, and about 400 RPM for the 2nd circle. Since the minimum required to expand the circle is 300 revolutions per minute. This means that you have already fulfilled the requirements for forming the 3rd circle. He decides that since he has reached the 2nd circle, he should try an experiment. He decides to try to improve his ice bullet spell. He thinks that by strengthening the molecular bonds of the bullet, he can increase its weight and hardness, and he will use a large caliber barrel to improve its strength and rotational speed. Cast the enhanced spell, Piercing Ice Bullet. He looks at the result, wondering how it was so easy to shoot an armor-piercing bullet, and realizes that adding just 1 circle made a huge difference. His teacher, Sabia, praises him, saying that he is a fast learner as expected. Dale thanks him and gives him the credit. Sabia thinks about recent events, from her rescue of the Knight of the Orcs to her story with Lady Charlotte. He concludes that he is a child who knows how to use his power correctly. She admits to herself that although this boy's talent is scary, it always gives her a reason to trust him, and that he really is her student to be proud of. Sabia hugs Dale, and he thinks to himself that their physical contact is too spontaneous, and the situation is awkward. That early morning, in the courtyard of the castle, Dale kept thinking about the situation, wondering if she only sees him as a child, but quickly dismisses the idea, realizing that it is not the time for such ideas. One day at dawn, Dale decides to focus on his training in the courtyard of the castle, starting by creating an ice wall. Then he tries a new spell he has developed, Ice Bullet. 12 caliber pellets, which breaks the ice wall, and then, the ice pellets bounce everywhere. Use a magic shield to block the bouncing shots. He smiles at the successful experiment, thinking about trying Balislack next time, but a voice interrupts him. It is Charlotte who also came to train. Dale asks if she's training too, and Charlotte confirms that she was practicing the steps her helmet taught her. Give him a note that he seems to be enjoying learning the sword. Charlotte responds with hesitation and embarrassment. Charlotte suddenly apologizes to Dale for her selfish behavior in their first meeting, expressing her regret for having been rude to him. He jokes that what he did was beyond rude, but he smiles and tells her that he will make a special exception and forgive her, and asks her not to be so formal with him. Charlotte is happy and agrees. Charlotte tells Dale that she likes the cold weather of the region because it cools her down quickly even if she trains late. He smiles, thinking about how happy he is to have someone else who shares the same thought. Meanwhile, the Duke and Duchess Elena observe the scene from a window of the castle. The Duchess comments that her son has grown up. The Duke asks her if she thinks they make a good couple. The Duchess replies that they will find out in time. The Duchess thinks to herself that she should help her son to be true to his feelings. Later, on the outskirts of the duchy, Duchess Elena oversees the relief works in the slums. She explains in her thoughts that her mother distributes food and necessities on a weekly basis. He reveals that he and Charlotte joined her this year. Charlotte stops a small child who seems distressed. The boy pleads for help, claiming that his mother is in danger. The boy grabs Charlotte's arm, begging him. Dale and Charlotte follow the child. While Dale thinks something is suspicious, he notices that they are moving away from the escort knights and heading towards a complex alley, and that the child asking Charlotte for help instead of the adults was strange from the beginning. Dale sees someone watching from a rooftop and realizes that the boy is from the Thieves' Guild. He is sure that Charlotte is the target, but he wonders why the trap is so obvious. The boy stops, tells them that he will go to look for his mother, and then runs out. At that moment, masked men surround Dale and Charlotte. One of them makes fun of the presence of nobles in such a dangerous place. One of the men clarifies that his business is with the little maid, Charlotte, and advises the young lord, Dale, to stay away. Another man smiles as he probes a dagger, warning him that he could get hurt if he acts rashly. Dale stands up to the robbers, announcing that he is Theoden Saxon, and that he has sworn to protect the young lady of the house. And Harler thugs like them. The leader of the robbers, with green hair, mocks the young noble's chivalry. He adds that it would have been better if Dale had considered the timing and the place. He comments that it looks like Dale needs to learn a little bit about the cruelty of the world. Charlotte whispers worriedly to Dale, telling him that she left her sword behind. He reassures her and tells her not to be afraid. He thinks to himself that this is the perfect opportunity to test the new skill of his son Cape. Shadow under the pretext of self-defense. The robbers attack Dale and Charlotte from all sides, trying to finish everything as soon as possible. One of the thieves notices a strange wind as Dale's shadows surround them. The leader angrily yells at his men to get out of the way. Dale notes the leader's wit, assuming he's a high-ranking thief, and then launches his attack. Uses a new ability he acquired after reaching the second circle, where he implants a shadow creature as a parasite inside one of the thieves. The thief screams in pain as the shadow creature enters him. The leader wonders with terror what Dale is creating. The infected thief transforms into a grotesque undead soldier shouting, "I'm hungry." The leader orders his men in a panic to kill that thing. He hesitates as he realizes that they are in a bind, and that a mistake could cost them their life. He launches into the attack himself. He brags that in this alley, even if two oracles met, they would not be able to stop their fangs, their shining daggers. Dale easily blocks his attack using his shadows and prepares a counterattack. The leader of the thieves curses the situation. Dale unleashes a new spell, 12-gauge double barrel. Blick magic shots come out of his hand, hitting the leader directly. The leader is thrown backwards by the force of the blow as Charlotte watches the scene in shock. Dale finds himself in the middle of the alley as the undead shadow soldier continues to attack another thief. He notes that the leader did not die from a blow and assumes that it is because of his aura-covered body. The injured leader gets up screaming that he is not finished yet and charges, screaming, dies. Dale unleashes his shadows that cut the leader in half before he even gets close. The undead soldier screams, "I'm so hungry," as he tears apart the body of another thief. After the battle is over, Dale approaches Charlotte, who is sitting on the ground, and asks her if she is injured. She answers, no. Dale holds Charlotte's hand as one of the injured robbers moans on the floor. The thief tries to escape, so Dale shoots him in the foot with an ice bullet. The last thief begs for help. Dale summons the shadow creature back to him. The thief offers to tell her everything he knows in exchange for his life. Dale asks her if she means everything she knows. The thief desperately confirms it. Dale prepares a spell, coldly telling him that he is not particularly interested. He unleashes a magical explosion that kills the last thief, while Charlotte is shocked. He tells her that this is the true face of the Duchy of Saxony, that people fear, but it is also the power that will protect her. He asks her if she's scared after seeing this. She admits that she's a little scared, but quickly adds that it's okay because he did it to protect her. She repeats the vow she made that day. If her family becomes the shield that protects her family, she will repay him in the future by becoming a sword to be used for him. She enthusiastically thanks him for showing her a future and declares that she will get stronger. He watches her, thinking to himself that his acceptance of Charlotte was partly due to the guilt he feels towards her battle, whom he killed in his past life. Therefore, her volunteering to become his sword had a much greater meaning than it could. I could have imagined. Meanwhile, at Count Brandenburg's castle, the Count curses the situation while reading a letter. The letter was an invitation to Saxony Castle, essentially a summons from the Black Duke, Duke of Saxony, to hold him responsible for the attempted kidnapping. Brandenburg realizes that even as the holy sword of the Empire, he had no choice but to obey. A few days later, Count Brandenburg arrives at Saxony Castle. The Duke, sitting on his throne with Dale by his side, welcomes him, commenting on his difficult journey. He adds that he did not expect it to arrive so quickly, and apologizes for the somewhat poor welcome. Brandenburg sarcastically replies that there is nothing more urgent than a summons from the Duke. He thinks to himself angrily, calling Dale and Charlotte sneaky little brats. The Duke continues, noting that there is great concern within the Empire about the recent daylight kidnapping attempt on the Duke's lands. He adds that he can guess why he was summoned. He scornfully wonders how he, the loyal sword of the Emperor, could be involved in such an indecent affair. As he speaks, a dark and dense aura begins to emanate from the Duke and spreads throughout the hall. Brandenburg is startled. One of his followers asks, "Why is there wind while the shadows surround them?" Count Brandenburg's knights are terrified as the shadows gradually begin to devour them. The knights shout for help to the Count as Brandenburg realizes that his Magdalene Holy Knight Order has been easily defeated without any resistance. Recognize the powerful dark magic. It's Duke Saxon casting a high-level dark spell called Riley's Tempest. The Duke turns to Count Brandenburg, the Sword of Holiness, and orders him to kneel down and stand still. Brandenburg angrily protests, asking what the Duke is doing. The Duke replies coldly, asking if he did not hear it. Then he warns her that there won't be a next time. Brandenburg silently curses the situation as he is forced to kneel for fear of the Duke's magical aura. He thinks that although the Black Duke has a reason for what he is doing, he never expected it to reach this level of humiliation. The Duke, sitting on his throne, reminds him that he summoned him for the sake of peace. He then issues a direct threat, promising to massacre every member of the Brandenburg family if the Count ever tries to harm Saxon's children. He expresses his sincere hope that the Count will take this warning seriously. Suddenly his tone changes, inviting the exhausted Count to warm up as a sarcastic gesture. The angry Brandenburg replies that he is grateful for the Duke's generosity, but apologizes because, due to the circumstances, it is difficult for him to stay longer. The Duke bids him farewell, wishing him a safe journey back. Dale, who was present, observes the situation, thinking that Brandenburg is one of the Emperor's most loyal followers, and what his father has just done to this man, who is close to the Emperor's faction, will become a fuse that will shake the entire empire. Dale realizes that it will start as a small spark, but it will soon turn into a flame. And he thinks that his role will be to cut off the head of the Sword of Holiness. By the time the news of the Sword of Holiness kneeling before the Black Duke had spread, the Duke was in his office. The Duke and the wise teacher are standing. Sabia is horrified. The Duke explains that the corpses before her belonged to the members of the Thieves' Guild who attacked Dale. Confirm that Dale is responsible for all of this. She notices the gruesome scene. A corpse that vomited its entrails, another crushed and full of holes. And for the first time, he begins to wonder if his teachings to Dale were wrong. He explains that, as she can see, in order to guide Dale's talent properly, they need his wisdom. Therefore, he offers her the position of chief counselor. The surprised wise one realizes that this means she's being asked to become a member of the Saxon family, not just a teacher. He explains that Dale trusts her a lot, and that guiding him is beyond his power alone. He claims that things will be different if she agrees to help them. She agrees, saying she understands. The wise teacher tells her that she is aware that her task of knowing how that child Dale sees this world has now become more critical than ever. Time passes and Dale's 10th birthday arrives in a luxurious banquet hall. What was different about this year's birthday party was also the presence of people from the Emperor faction. There was one particularly prominent figure among those present. The welcome was given by the Marquis Julius, who in turn comes forward to greet the young Lord Dale, expressing his pleasure at meeting him. Meanwhile, the guests at the party expressed their admiration for the good food, praising Duke Saxon's generosity. They commented that this luxury was amazing to be in the heart of the North, and that their previous concerns that the duchy was too far from the empire were misplaced. Dale watches the situation, thinking that these are the central nobles of the imperial capital, the core of the emperor's faction, and the greatest power under his name. He realizes that the reason for his coming to this party is perfectly clear. It is an implicit warning. It is a message from the imperial family that they will not stand idly by regarding the humiliation inflicted on the sword of holiness, Count Brandenburg. And now, standing in front of him, is the messenger who understands this perfectly clear message, the Marquis Ulysses. The Marquis studies Dale, saying, "So this is young Nordale." Marquis Ulysses introduces himself to Dale, identifying himself by his title, the Crimson Lord. Dale thinks about the identity of the Marquis. He is the head of the Tower of Red Magic, the tower that pursues fire and fury and order through power. The magicians of this tower follow the spirit that power makes the prevailing right in the empire, and they did not hesitate to become tools to carry out the ambitions of the empire. He remembers from his past life that he underwent all kinds of forced magical modifications at the hands of the wizards of the Red Tower. The Marquis Ulysses addresses Dale, saying that he has heard about the miraculous genius of the ducal family, possessing a magical talent unparalleled in the empire. He continues, mentioning the rumors that Dale, at only 9 years old, exterminated a horde of orcs to protect one of the family knights. He concludes by saying that Dale is truly the Duke's son. Dale smiles slightly. He thanks her politely and wishes her a pleasant time. She walks away, thinking about how exhausting it is to receive birthday greetings this way every year. She thinks that she would rather be training with Charlotte, but her official status as a lady-in-waiting, a maid, who helps her mother, prevents this. More importantly, he realizes how dangerous it would be if the sword god's daughter, Charlotte, were to be seen practicing fencing. Suddenly, he hears a scream, and the voice of a man ordering a damn maid to stay still. He wonders where the scream came from. Dale follows the sound to find a man attacking a maid who is on the floor, begging her to leave her alone, reminding her that she serves the Saxon house. The fat man, one of the guests at the party, shouts at her, wondering how a humble maid dares to pronounce the name of the Duke's family. He continues his complaint by saying that it is the young lord's birthday, and everyone is having fun. He adds that instead of wasting time on this nonsense, the party, it's better to play with a girl. He threatens the maid, and that he will kill her if she resists any longer. As the man orders the maid to submit to him, Dale intervenes, coldly asking, "What do you think you're doing?" The man is surprised to see the young mortal, and gets nervous, wondering what Dale is doing here, trying to get out of the situation. The fat guy named Pietro tries to get out of the situation, rudely asking him if he has ever enjoyed a woman since he is still young. He offers to personally show her everything, while holding the trembling maid, Ed, and threatening her with a knife. Dale ignores her provocation and assures Ed not to worry. He tells her that he will save her soon. He thinks to himself that since this world is a class-based society, Pietro would never imagine that he, a noble, would attack him, an imperial guest. He exploits this hesitation and casts an ice spell, hitting Pietro. Pietro falls to the ground while Dale. He thinks that he has no intention of recklessly backing down, but he also realizes that attacking the Emperor's man is not a good option. Pietro gets up angrily, asking him the meaning of this. Dale coldly orders her to kneel down. He shouts at the surprised Pietro, repeating his order to kneel, and apologize to Miss Eve. He clarifies that Miss Ed is one of the people from the Saxon house. Pietro protests, reminding him that he is here on behalf of His Majesty, the Emperor, and that insulting him to protect a humble servant is equivalent to giving him. Interrupts him with a sarcastic question. His Majesty, the Emperor, has a penchant for raping other people's maids. Pietro is shocked and accuses him of daring to say such a thing. At that moment, Duke Jackson, Marquis Ulysses, and the rest of the guests arrive. Marquis Ulysses comments with a smile that this is an interesting show. The Duke asks his son Dale about the cause of this commotion. Dale explains that this man, Pietro, was trying to assault a maid at the Saxon house. One of the nobles asks Dale sarcastically if he is treating Mr. Pietro with such contempt for such a trivial reason. Pietro seizes the opportunity and complains to the Duke about the immature young lord. Dale interrupts him sternly by asking, "Who allowed you to stand up?" He addresses the guests, explaining that the nobles of the imperial capital are charged with the duty of representing the emperor. However, this man, Pietro, tried to tarnish the emperor's reputation by assaulting a humble maid. For this reason, I could not tolerate the shameful behavior of Mr. Pietro. Marquis Ulysses laughs, commenting that the young lord's wit is a masterpiece, and confirms that his words are absolutely correct. He adds, "How dare someone representing Her Majesty try to assault a simple maid?" He calls his assistant Tulare and orders her to kill this insect, Pietro. Pietro is surprised and screams for help. Ulysses launches a fire attack. Pietro screams in pain as he burns. Ulysses declares that the young lord's words are 100% correct, and that it is her duty to burn the insects that try to insult the imperial family and the empire. Marquis Ulysses concludes the scene by expressing his high hopes for the future of the young Nordale. After the commotion subsided, the emperor's men left, and peace returned once more to Duke Saxon's castle. Then, one morning, the maid wakes up young Nortali. She thanks him and notices his hesitation, asking if there is something he wants to say, and hesitantly thanks him, expressing how proud she is to serve him. He asks himself why he hesitated just to say that, thinking that although he has been in this world for a long time, he is still not used to this kind of respect, but he must get used to it. He thanks Ed again. He believes that, as the eldest son of the Saxon house, he understands the weight of this name, and will use everything he has to bring down the empire. Later, the Duke summons his son Dale to his office. The Duke tells him that he thinks he is a bright boy, but his recent actions have been strange. He asks her why. Dale surprises him by asking if he knew that if the otherworldly hero had not died in his fight against the sword god, the hero's sword's next target would have been the Duchy of Saxon itself. The Duke is surprised to hear this. The Duke comments that this is a bold statement and asks what makes him so sure. Vale hesitates, thinking to himself that the reason is that he heard in his past life that the Empire was plotting against the Saxon house. He quickly changes his answer in his thoughts, explaining to his father, actually, that the Empire chose to get rid of the hero's power, because they were afraid that this house dog would get out of control. He adds that in the past, even though the hero defeated the Demon King, the Empire did not completely eradicate the darkness in the Demon King's lands. Instead, he issued a ridiculous order for the Ajans to reclaim those lands and turn them into imperial territory, forcing them to exhaust their resources, and even granting those lands to the Duke like a thief. Dale concludes that as long as the darkness in that land has not completely disappeared, its drainage will never stop. In addition, the people of the Empire, and those from outside the north, point the finger at him, calling them the Clan of Darkness. For this reason, just as the Empire got rid of the hero, it will try to eliminate the internal threat, the Ajans that threatens them. The Duke asks his son in amazement how he knew that they had discarded the hero. Dale replies that this is just his own guess based on his readings in the files, because everything doesn't seem logical. The official narrative says that the hero died an honorable death after a fierce battle with the sword god, Lord Battle. Dale thinks to himself that his father must be surprised that he has discovered the truth, which only a few people know, just by reading books. Dale continues his analysis by saying that if his assumption is correct, then the justice of empire is nothing more than the justice of a tyrant who uses violence to rob weak nations. The Duke looks at his son, thinking that this child possesses the wisdom of the ages. He asked her for her opinion. Which way should the Saxon house take? Dale boldly replies that the House of Saxon can never coexist with the Empire, and therefore they must destroy the Empire. The Duke is gravely shocked by this statement. She calls him by his name seriously, and asks him seriously if he realizes what he is saying. Dale clarifies that he is not suggesting starting a rebellion now. He's talking about 10 years from now. The Duke asks himself, 10 years? Dale continues his explanation to his father, clarifying that even today, there are still resistance forces all over the continent that want independence. There are also lords, like Duke Saxon himself, who fear that the Empire will turn its sword against them. He adds that the economy is shrinking. The number of bandits is increasing day by day, and the scars of war are getting worse. Even though the unification of the continent is complete, he suggests that until the right time comes, after 10 years, they should strengthen themselves to protect their home from the Empire. He suggests to achieve this by helping the active resistance forces in various regions. Dale goes on to explain his entire plan to bring down the Empire. He continues to explain until the sun begins to set, then asks his father for his opinion. The Duke laughs, expressing that the depth of his son's talent is immeasurable. He admits that Dale can see a scene much further away than he can perceive. He expresses his immense pride that Dale is his son. He tells him that from now on, he will not treat him just like his eldest son or like a 10-year-old, but will treat him with the respect due to the future boss who will lead the Saxon house. Dale is moved to hear this. The Duke claims that, as a boss to another, he will listen to his words and respect them. Dale realizes that this is the moment he's been waiting for. It is the right to move the power of the Saxon house with his own hands. The Duke asks his son to speak without hesitation about the decision he will make at this very moment, for his Dale smiles and reminds him of his father who promised to treat him as an equal boss. Based on that, he requests permission to participate in the tower test in Necropolis. The Duke is surprised to hear this request. The narration explains that the tower test is a type of ranking game to determine the hierarchy between the wizards who face the guardians of the magic tower. Those who defeat the high-level guardians earn the right to become tower elders, and the person at the top of the tower is awarded the title of Tower Master. The Duke comments on his son's request, reminding him that the tower test is an extremely dangerous place, where he could easily lose his life. He adds that it is too early for Dale, who has not even completed the third circle, to try, but Dale confidently replies that he will be reached by the third circle soon. The Duke points out that reaching the third circle usually doesn't happen until your mid-20s, and even for Dale, who has already mastered the second, it is still difficult. Dale insists, explaining that this is a decision for him, his father, and for the Saxon house. When his father asks him what he means, he explains that if he proves himself through the test, the status of his father, the Duke, will be further consolidated thanks to an heir like him. You will also gain a reliable reputation, instead of just being the subject of gossip from enthusiasts. The Duke asks her if this is the reason she wants to take the test. Dale confirms it. The Duke smiles, telling her that he understands and will leave the judgment to him. Dale rejoices and promises his father that he will prove it to him. A few days later, the Duke and Dale arrive at the city of the dead, Necropolis. The huge door opens, and the Black Duke is received with all due respect by those present. Dale yawns, thinking maybe he gave in this time, referring to his exhaustion. The people of Necropolis notice the arrival of Duke Saxon and Dorotheo. One wonders if the rumors are true that Dale is a magical genius, as he has never seen the Empire before, while another comments that Dale looks miserable and tells him not to doubt his words. The whispers continue through the crowd when one sarcastically points out that he heard Dale's swordsmanship rivals the Duke's knights, calling him pathetic. Felix, the best graduate of the Academy, declares that he is the one who deserves to win this test, not the brat of the duchy. Dale, who looks weak. Dale and his father arrive at the tower. A woman named Iris greets him, paying her respects to the master of the tower, the Duke. The Duke greets Iris, who in turn offers her allegiance to Lord Dio. It is revealed that Iris is an elder of the tower, and the general secretary, who oversees the affairs of the tower, in the absence of the Black Duke. The Duke tells his son that Iris will help him during the test, and he agrees. He tells her that he will be in her care. She responds, of course, and asks him to follow her. Iris takes Dale to a large hall, explaining that 59 Academy graduates will be taking the test with him. Dale looks towards the room full of competitors. Iris welcomes you all, introducing herself as the General Secretary. He begins to explain the test of the first floor of the Black Magic Tower, asking everyone to check the hit point pendants around their necks. She explains that the test is a real battle to steal hit points. Each pendant contains a shield magic for protection and a hit point. If a participant hits an opponent with the corpses in the area, his pendant will be destroyed. The shield will be activated and you will be eliminated. The successful attacker will receive an extra point, and whoever gets 3 points goes to the next floor. Finally, the use of artifacts is prohibited and considered cheating, resulting in immediate disqualification. Dale thinks that these rules are designed to filter out beginners quickly. The participants whisper about Dale, calling him a monster. They wonder how he reached the third circle at that age. Felix suggests that they team up to defeat that monster first. Someone is wondering if it is safe to attack the young Nord. Felix dismisses the concern, stating that everyone is an equal competitor once the test starts. Dale listens to him, praises their confidence, and challenges them in his mind to see if it's true. Iris announces the start of the test. The participants begin to lift the corpses like undead soldiers. Felix notices that Dale hasn't moved, so he sends his undead soldier straight at him, brandishing his sword. Felix is shocked to see Dale's undead soldier block the attack. The attacker is shocked to realize that Dale is using water magic. Your soldier freezes. He wonders if he possesses dual affinity, the ability to use two types of magic. As his soldier attacks Dale's undead soldier, the participant screams in anger as he sees his undead soldier shatter against Dale's soldier. Another undead soldier attacks Dale's soldier, but the attack is blocked. Dale calmly explains that the attack is useless because he protected his soldier with an ice shield. Felix screams angrily, accusing him of cheating and breaking the rules by using water magic. Felix states that the rules forbid using any magic other than dark magic, raising and enhancing the undead. Dale asks coldly, "Really?" He directs his question to Iris, the Watcher, asking if there really is a rule that says the undead can only be enhanced by dark magic. Iris remains silent. Dale concludes that, as the test has not stopped, he is right. Felix curses in frustration. Felix, the top graduate, yells at his classmates, ordering them to block Dale's ice-enhanced undead soldier, while they attack Dale directly. He claims that he is just an opponent, and they can overwhelm him with their number. Dale thinks that the use of artifacts is also prohibited. In that case, he decides to fight himself, and rushes towards the attacking undead. He dodges their attacks gracefully, and snatches a sword from one of the undead soldiers, then hits him with a black magic-enhanced punch. Then he cuts another undead one with ease. One of the participants is shocked, wondering how his undead soldier was cut so easily. Felix thinks Dale's sword is not ordinary. Iris, the observer, notices that Dale reconfigured the bones to increase the durability of the sword. Dale keeps fighting, and another undead soldier attacks him. He jumps in the air and lowers his sword on the undead soldier, leaving Felix in shock, having lost all his soldiers. Felix wonders in terror if it is logical that a magician is so skilled with a sword. Dale advances towards the broken Felix, who begs him for mercy. Dale teases him, telling him that he won't actually die for the protective pendant. He brandishes his sword at Felix's head. Felix is defeated, his pendant destroyed, calling him a monster. Iris gets up to announce the results. He declares that Lord Dale is the only survivor who passed the test with 60 health points, the points of all competitors. Dale thinks that this place will be his first step, and that everyone should watch him closely. The scene switches to the second floor of the tower trial, a trial that requires the defeat of the Guardian, a flesh golem. Explain your thoughts. That usually the survivors of the first floor unite to defeat this Guardian, but he eliminated them all. So he is alone. And unlike the first floor, all types of magic are allowed on this floor. And although the no artifact rule is still in force, he considers this to be more than enough. Consider this an opportunity to form the third circle, and prove your true potential. The golem attacks Dale, but he dodges the attack, and launches an attack, injuring the golem's arm. The golem is surprised, smiles, and starts casting a new spell, Accelerated Decay. Iris, the observer, notices that the magic the young lord is casting is no ordinary spell. The golem's body is corroded by magic, and Iris wonders why Dale chose to corrupt the target instead of dismembering him. Dale contemplates the accelerated decay magic he cast on the golem, thinking that in his past life, biochemical warfare was a key strategy along with firearms when facing monsters. He wonders, wiping the blood from his face, if he observed them. Saviors, like Iris, realize that the horrors of biochemical warfare are now being expressed through black magic. That day, Dale completed the test, setting a record by reaching the 10th floor, and was granted 4 days off before the 11th floor started. Meanwhile, to recover from the unprecedented massacre that occurred on the first floor caused by Dale, a rare repeat of the test was granted to the other 59 participants. That night, after the test was over, Dale was standing alone by a fountain. The wise teacher calls him, congratulating him on his outstanding performance in the test. He thanks her, attributing his success to what she taught him. He then surprises her by asking if she would like to go on a date with him. He clarifies that a festival is being held in the city. Sepia agrees to go. She thinks that she is still too young to really understand the meaning of a date, while he thinks with a sly smile that this is what they mean by having a dark heart. They arrive at the Necropolis City Festival, full of celebrations and fireworks. Sepia asks Dale if he is not tired after the arduous test. He answers that no. He adds that he has a few days before the next test. Silence falls between them, and Dale remarks that the moon looks beautiful tonight. She agrees. Think about how hard it is to keep the conversation going. He thinks that silence with Sibylla was never uncomfortable, perhaps because she always completely trusted him. And for that reason, he felt that he wanted to get closer to her. He remembers the last few days when he managed to reach the third circle. At that moment, he came across what Sibylla always talked about: the landscape of the mind. To reach the third circle, he had to overcome his limits by releasing mana, which would be the ability of the second circle, known as mana overflow. While doing this, he suddenly found himself in a strange place, wondering where he was. He hears the echo of Sepia's voice telling him that he can't help but reveal the landscape of his mind. He realizes that he is in his mental world, the world of enlightenment. He realizes that his world was empty from the very beginning. And in that void, Teacher Sepia was the only one who held out her hand to him. Back at the festival, Dale looks at Sepia and thinks that maybe that's why he wants the teacher who lit up his world. Suddenly he declares, "I love you." Sepia is surprised and asks him what he said. He repeats his confession. Sepia smiles softly, hugs him, and tells him that she understands and that she is also very fond of him. He thanks her, thinking that living a second life really has its advantages. A few days later, on the day of the 11th floor test, Dale thinks that nothing has developed between him and Sepia after that confession. He assumes that he probably considered it just a childhood crush of a 10-year-old. I could do nothing but concentrate on the next test. Iris explains that this time, the test is a magical one-on-one duel where the winner ascends to the 12th floor. Dale finds himself facing his opponent, who introduces himself as Albert Rosenheim, a master of the third circle. She warns Dale that she won't be lenient with him just because he's a boy. Dale explains in his thoughts that in this 11th floor test, the use of all magical power is allowed. And since the restrictions of the artifact have also been lifted, the life point pendant does not completely guarantee the safety of the contestant. Dale's opponent Albert thinks that now that the restrictions have been removed, he will show Dale the overwhelming gap between them with all his might. He warns her to stay alert in this duel. He tells her that she is nothing like the rookie academy graduates Dale fought with before, and that the young lord's confidence ends here. Launches a dark arrow attack, firing a volley of magic arrows at Dale. Challenges him to block this attack. He continues his taunt, saying that Dale's confidence won't take him any further, and launches another wave of attacks. Dale dodges the attacks with grace. Dale thinks the Vertizo cheated by casting an offensive spell before the duel officially started. However, no one stopped the fight, concluding that they are curious to see his abilities. He thinks that this is a world built on absolute merit. He curses the wizards in silence while Albert seizes the opportunity. Albert screams, ordering his creations to stand up and swear eternal obedience to him, and encourages the bloodthirsty progeny of darkness. Dale watches the scene with boredom, thinking to himself that he is ashamed just watching this, wondering where his opponent learned this ridiculous chant. However, he admits that his ability to see you is better than the one of those beginners. Dale continues to dodge the attacks of the undead that Albert summons. This angers Albert, who asks him how long he plans to keep dodging, stating that he cannot win by running away alone. He asks if this is all he has, and orders one of his undead soldiers to authorize himself. Destroy. He declares that the victory is his. Suddenly, Albert realizes that Dale has disappeared, wondering since when and where he went. Dale appears behind him, sarcastically asking if he doesn't think cheating on a child is a bit cowardly. Albert looks confused. Dale admits that his surprise attack was clever and uses the spectral form, an ability of the shadow cloak. He warns his opponent that he is still far from defeating him. Meanwhile, Dale's shadow creatures begin to express their intense hunger. asking if they can eat Albert. He smiles and allows them to move on, but warns them not to overeat. The shadows attack Albert, who screams in pain. Dale comments that the shadows seem a little excited because they were hungry. Albert pleads for mercy. Dale orders the shadows to retreat. Albert falls unconscious, and Iris declares to Dale the winner of the first round. Dale asks who is the next magician for the second round. The next contestant withdraws, saying he just wants to live. The counting for the third round begins. From that moment until the final match, Dale automatically advanced by forfeit, except for a match that required a fight. After that, Dale refined and mastered his 3 magic circles, and started defeating the floor guardians one by one. When he reached the 20th floor, an opponent worthy of his level finally appeared. The guardian was the Headless Knight. This knight, personally crafted by an elder of the Black Tower, was an enemy incomparable to what he came before. Observers comment that even for the young lord, this could be the limit. Dale smiles, thinking that things going so predictably would be boring. The battle between Dale and the Headless Knight begins. The spectators look on in amazement, wondering what is going on. Everyone is stunned when they find the Headless Knight kneeling before Dale. Dale orders her to commit suicide. The Headless Knight immediately stabs himself and falls, destroyed. Dale thinks that this loyalty, which made the knight abandon his role as a guardian, is impressive. Then he realizes that he might have gone too far and exaggerated his hand. He understands why the viewers are shocked that a creation, the knight, will betray his master, the old man of the tower, and declare loyalty to him, Dale. It meant that he had reached a level comparable to that of an elder of the Black Tower, which he had not intended to reveal. He decides that he has proved enough, and that it is time to return. He's heading for the exit. The observers ask him why he is leaving. He thinks that even if he could keep climbing, there's a line he can't cross. He realizes that if he ascends further, he will transcend the realm of monsters and become something unknowable. And with that, Dale's ordeal is over. With the end of Dale's test, the tower's own tests ended. On the arrival of the master of the tower and his son Dale, the whole Black Tower offered a military salute. Not only the noble families in Saxony, but all the magi in the Black Tower, including the elders, bowed down to the Duke and his son. Thanks to Dale's overwhelming achievements, the entire northern region, it began to slowly coalesce. In the Duchy of Saxony, in the Northern Empire, the knights are shown fighting and cheering on the young Lord Dale and the House of Saxony. After safely completing the tower trial, Dale received an order from his father, the Duke, to lead a campaign against an order of orcs. This was a ridiculously heavy responsibility for a 10-year-old. However, not a single person doubted his ability as a commander. As the rightful heir of the Black Duke, Dale gradually began to unite the entire northern region. Later, Dale informs his father announcing that they have eliminated 145 orcs. The Duke asks about the night casualties. Dale replies that there are 3 slightly injured. No other loss. The Duke asks if he used magic to protect them. Dale denies this, stating that the merit belongs only to the swords of the Saxon house. The Duke smiles and praises her work. Sir Helmet remarks to the Duke that the young lord has already become accustomed to leading a regiment-sized unit of knights. Dale humbly replies that all the credit goes to Sir Helmet's teachings. Sir Helmet praises him, acknowledging that Dale learned fencing, strategy, tactics, and the art of war from him. He predicts that at this rate, the day is not far off when Dale will lead his own territory in a war of dominance. Dale smiles at the idea of a war of dominance, always welcoming any new stage. The scene changes to Dale and Charlotte training. Charlotte screams as she lunges. They exchange quick blows. The fierce clash between them continues. Dale finishes the training, commenting that Charlotte's level has improved a little. Charlotte replies annoyed that she talks about it as if she doesn't care. He asks if he bothered her too much. She reminds him that he became a third circle magician and passed the 20th floor of the tower test. She adds that since then, she has heard nothing but constant praise for the young mortal and asks if he is not sick of it. He assures her not to worry too much. He encourages her that she too will become stronger. He thinks to himself that, considering that he is only 10 years old, Charlotte's talent is far from ordinary. Charlotte gets angry and yells at him not to treat her like a child. He replies that she is a girl. She replies that he is also a child. He smiles and tells her that he is already an adult, referring to his awareness of his past life. Later, Sorhammer starts a new lesson with Dale. He explains that today he will teach him the hammer and anvil tactic, and explains that the tactic is based on the cavalry breaking the enemy's flank and surrounding him, while the infantry blocks the enemy cavalry's counterattack. He emphasizes that this is the key, and the name of the tactic is inspired by the process of hitting metal on an anvil with a hammer. Dale concludes that this tactic is only possible thanks to the existence of the Black Cavalry. He thinks to himself that, regardless of the world, the nature of war does not change much. Helmet asks her about Charlotte's training progress. Dale replies that his training is splendid, although not comparable to Dale's training. He explains that the fundamentals of his fencing have taken shape, and he will soon start learning aura techniques and the Saxon family sword style. But he mentions that there is a concern. Dale interrupts him, guessing that the concern is about the compatibility between Charlotte and her sword style. The narration explains that just as magicians refine mana into magic through their circles, knights can also refine mana and store it as aura through internal discipline. And just as wizards form towers, knights form orders to pass on their fencing legacy. Among these is the Black Cavalry, belonging to the Order of the Night Raven of the North Saxon family. Your style is based on overwhelming power. The problem is that Charlotte's style is based on speed and agility. With his current talent, he could barely make it to the ranks of the 7 swords, but he will never reach the rank of the first sword, the position his father used to hold, or the person who was nicknamed the Sword of Flares. Sir Helmet continues, expressing his regret that the Flares sword style completely disappeared with the fall of the Night Kingdom. Dale wonders if this style has really disappeared from the world, as Dale was constantly building his reputation through arduous training schedules and monster subjugations. The time finally came to demonstrate the results of this training. The Duke receives a messenger and seems stunned by what he hears. The messenger confirms that the male neighbor Volk claims ownership of the Duke's copper mine and has formally requested a war of dominion. And Dale thinks that although the boundaries in this world are not perfectly clear, it is unwise for a low-ranking noble, male, to quarrel with a high-ranking noble duke. The messenger adds that if the Duke refuses to cede the mine and agrees to war, Archduke Brandenburg has declared his support for the male's claim in exchange for a share of the profits from the cobble mine. And it won't stop there. Brandenburg will send his Order of St. Magdalene to support the male. Dale immediately understands what is happening, realizing that Brandenburg has not forgotten the humiliation he suffered at the hands of his father. And this is his way of retaliating and getting revenge.